My fiancé found me kissing my ex at our engagement party. He brought us both inside and called off our wedding in front of everyone. But what happened next when both families turned against me will shock you even more. Marcus was upset with me right there in the garden. His face was completely red and I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I knew I could explain everything if he just listened to me for 1 second. Tyler was standing there looking guilty, which wasn't helping my case at all, and Marcus just kept asking how could I do this to him on our special night. "It's not what it looks like, Marcus, I swear," I said, trying to reach for his arm, but he pulled away from me like I was contagious or something. Tyler just wanted to congratulate us, and we were talking about old times and it just happened, but it doesn't mean anything. But Marcus wasn't having any of it. He was visibly shaking, and I could see people starting to come outside from the party to see what all the commotion was about, which was definitely not what I needed right now. His cousin Jake was the first one out, followed by my sister Emma, who took one look at Tyler standing there with his shirt all wrinkled and me with my makeup messed up, and she knew exactly what had happened. "Are you kidding me, Jessica?" Emma said, and I could tell she was disappointed, but she didn't understand the whole situation. "At your own engagement party?" Marcus took my wrist firmly, and he started walking toward the venue, leading me along, while Tyler just stood there like an idiot not knowing what to do. I kept trying to explain that it was just a moment of weakness, and that I was feeling overwhelmed about the wedding, and seeing Tyler again brought up all these old feelings. But that didn't mean I loved Marcus any less. "Everyone's going to be staring at us," I whispered to Marcus as we got closer to the back door of the venue. But he didn't seem to care about making a scene anymore. "Can't we just talk about this privately later?" "No, Jessica, we're done talking privately," he said, and his voice was so cold I barely recognized it. "Everyone deserves to know what kind of person they're celebrating tonight." When we walked back into the party, the music was still playing, but I could feel everyone's eyes on us immediately, and the conversations got quieter as people noticed Marcus's angry expression and my disheveled appearance. My mum was standing near the bar, talking to Marcus's parents, and when she saw us, she started walking over with this concerned look on her face. "What's wrong, sweetie?" she asked, looking between Marcus and me. But before I could answer, Marcus just blurted it out right there in front of everyone. "The engagement is off," he announced loudly enough that half the party could hear him. "I just found Jessica making out with her ex-boyfriend in the garden." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening, and I felt like everyone in the room was staring at me, waiting for me to say something, but what was I supposed to say? My mom's face went white, and Marcus's mom gasped and covered her mouth with her hand, while his dad just shook his head like he was disgusted. "Marcus, don't do this here," I pleaded with him, trying to keep my voice down, but he was already pulling his phone out of his pocket. "Please, let's just go somewhere private and talk about this like adults." But instead of putting his phone away, he started scrolling through it, and I realized with horror that he was looking at the text messages between Tyler and me from the past few weeks. Messages that I thought I had been careful about, but apparently not careful enough because Marcus had obviously seen them at some point. "Should I read these out loud, Jessica?" he said, holding up his phone so some of the people around us could see it. "Should I tell everyone how you've been planning this little reunion for weeks behind my back?" I felt my stomach drop because those messages definitely looked worse than they actually were, and taken out of context, they made it seem like I had been planning to cheat all along, when really Tyler and I were just catching up as friends. But I could see how Marcus might misinterpret some of the things we said, especially the part where Tyler told me he still had feelings for me, and I didn't immediately shut it down. "Those messages don't mean what you think they mean," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Tyler reached out to congratulate us on the engagement, and we were just talking about old times. Marcus started reading from his phone in this loud, clear voice that carried across the room. "Hey, Jess, can't stop thinking about you since I heard the news," he read, and then looked up at me with this expression of pure betrayal. "Followed by your response saying you've been thinking about him too, and asking if he wanted to meet up sometime soon." More people were gathering around us now, including Tyler's sister, who had been invited to the party because she was friends with my cousin, and she looked mortified that her brother was being exposed like this. But I was more concerned about my own family, who were all staring at me like they didn't recognize me anymore. I was just being polite, I said, but even as the words came out of my mouth, I knew how ridiculous they sounded. I didn't want to be rude to someone I used to care about. Being polite, Marcus repeated sarcastically, and then he scrolled down to another message. Here's you being polite by telling him you miss talking to him and that you're nervous about getting married because what if you're settling down with the wrong person? I wanted to disappear into the floor because that message sounded absolutely terrible when read out loud in front of everyone. But when I sent it, I was just having normal pre-wedding jitters that every bride has. It wasn't like I was seriously questioning my relationship with Marcus. I was just processing my feelings about such a big life change. And here's the best part. Marcus continued getting louder and more angry. Yesterday you told him you wanted to see him at the party tonight because you needed closure before the wedding. Closure, Jessica, really? My dad stepped forward at this point, looking confused and hurt. Jessica, what is he talking about? He asked in this quiet voice that somehow made me feel worse than if he had yelled. You invited your ex-boyfriend to your engagement party. I didn't invite him, Dad, I said quickly, trying to do damage control. He asked if he could come to congratulate us, and I thought it would be weird to say no since we ended things on good terms. But that wasn't entirely true either, because Tyler had definitely pushed to be invited, and I had encouraged it because part of me did want to see him again before I got married. Not because I wanted to cheat, but because I wanted to prove to myself that I was over him and ready to commit to Marcus completely. Marcus's dad walked over to his son and put a hand on his shoulder. Son, maybe we should handle this more privately, he suggested, but Marcus shook his head and pulled out the engagement ring from his pocket. No, Dad, everyone should know exactly who they're dealing with, Marcus said, and then he threw the ring down on the floor right in front of me. I'm not marrying someone who thinks emotional cheating is just being polite. The ring hit the marble floor with this tiny sound that somehow seemed to echo through the entire room, and I bent down to pick it up, but Marcus stepped back away from me. Several people gasped, and I could hear someone's aunt whispering about how embarrassing this all was, which made everything 10 times worse. It wasn't emotional cheating, I said, standing back up with the ring in my hand, but Marcus just laughed bitterly. I love you, Marcus, you know I love you, and one stupid mistake doesn't change that. One stupid mistake, he repeated, and I could see his hands shaking. He was so upset. Jessica, you've been lying to me for weeks about talking to your ex, and then you snuck out of our own engagement party to make out with him in the garden while our families were inside celebrating our future together. When he put it like that, it did sound pretty bad, but he was making it seem so much more calculated and malicious than it actually was. I hadn't planned for the kiss to happen. It just did when Tyler told me he was still in love with me and always regretted letting me go. It was a moment of weakness, not some elaborate scheme to betray Marcus. I know how it looks, but you have to believe me that I never meant for any of this to happen, I said, and I could feel tears starting to form in my eyes. Tyler caught me off guard with what he said, and I wasn't thinking clearly. But even as I said it, I knew it sounded like excuses because the truth was that when Tyler kissed me, I didn't immediately pull away like I should have. For a few seconds, I kissed him back because it felt familiar and safe and reminded me of when we were together in college before everything got complicated. My sister Emma came over and grabbed my arm gently. Jess, maybe you should stop talking right now, she whispered, but I could tell even she was disgusted with me from the way she couldn't quite look me in the eye. No, Emma, everyone needs to understand that this isn't what Marcus is making it seem like, I said, turning to address the room full of our friends and family. Yes, I made a mistake, but I'm not some terrible person who planned to hurt the man I love. But looking around the room, I could see that most people weren't buying my explanation, and I didn't blame them, because honestly, if I heard the story about someone else, I would probably think they were a cheater too. Marcus's sister Sarah was standing with her arms crossed, shaking her head, and even my own cousin, who had always supported me, looked disappointed. My mum finally approached us, looking like she was about to cry. Jessica, honey, what were you thinking? She asked, and her voice was so sad it broke my heart. This boy loves you and wants to marry you, and this is how you treat him. Mom, you don't understand, I started to say, but she held up her hand to stop me. I understand perfectly, sweetie, she said, and then she turned to Marcus. I'm so sorry, Marcus. You deserve so much better than this, and I'm ashamed of my daughter's behavior tonight. Hearing my own mother side with Marcus was like a knife to the chest, because I expected my family to support me, even when I messed up. But instead, they were all looking at me like I was some kind of monster. Even my dad, who usually stayed out of relationship drama, was nodding along with what my mum said. Mrs. Chen, you don't need to apologize for Jessica's choices, Marcus said politely, but I could tell he was still furious. But I appreciate your support because this isn't easy for me either. Tyler finally decided to speak up, which was probably the worst possible timing. Look, everyone, this is my fault, he said, stepping forward. I should never have come here tonight, and I should never have told Jessica how I felt about her. Don't you dare try to take responsibility for her choices, Marcus snapped at him. She's a grown woman who decided to betray the person she's supposed to marry, and that's on her, not you. But Tyler kept going, even though he was clearly making things worse. Jessica was just confused because we have so much history together, and seeing me again brought up old feelings that she thought she had dealt with. Stop talking, Tyler, you're not helping, I hissed at him, but the damage was already done, because now everyone knew that this wasn't just some random kiss, but something that had been building up since he contacted me. Marcus turned back to me with this look of complete disgust. So he's right then, he said. You've been having feelings for him this whole time we've been planning our wedding. No, that's not what I said, I protested, but I could see how Tyler's words could be interpreted that way. I was just surprised to hear from him again, and it brought up some nostalgia, but that doesn't mean I wanted to be with him instead of you. Then why did you kiss him back, Jessica? Marcus asked, and his voice cracked a little bit like he was trying not to cry. If you really wanted to be with me, you would have pushed him away immediately. That was the question I had been dreading because I didn't have a good answer that would make any of this okay. The truth was that for those few seconds when Tyler was kissing me, I forgot about everything else, including Marcus, and our engagement, and our future together. It felt like going back in time to when things were simpler, and I didn't have to worry about whether I was making the right choice. Making the right choice? I don't know why I didn't push him away, I said honestly, because lying anymore seemed pointless. It was like my brain just shut off and I wasn't thinking about anything. Your brain shut off, Marcus repeated incredulously. That's your explanation for cheating on me at our engagement party. Your brain shut off. More people were leaving at this point, probably because the situation was too uncomfortable to watch, but the core group of family members were still standing around us, like we were some kind of twisted entertainment. The venue coordinator came over, looking nervous about the disruption we were causing. Excuse me, but other guests are starting to complain about the noise level, she said diplomatically. Perhaps you could take this conversation somewhere more private. There's nothing more to discuss, Marcus said firmly. The party's over as far as I'm concerned, and so is our relationship. He started walking toward the exit, and I panicked, because I knew if he left now, I might never get another chance to fix this. I followed him, calling his name, but he didn't slow down or turn around even when I grabbed his jacket sleeve. Marcus, please don't leave like this, I begged. We can work through this if you just give me a chance to explain everything properly. He finally stopped and turned around, but the look on his face was like nothing I had ever seen before. Explain what, Jessica, he said. Explain how you've been emotionally cheating on me for weeks. Explain how you brought your ex to our engagement party. Explain how you snuck out to make out with him while I was inside talking to our families about wedding plans. I know it looks terrible, but people make mistakes, I said desperately. I'm not perfect, but neither are you, and we can get past this if we both try. You're right, I'm not perfect, he said, but I've never cheated on you or lied to you or betrayed your trust in front of our entire families. So don't try to make this about both of us making mistakes because this is all on you. My name's Jessica. I'm 29 years old, and I work in marketing for a tech startup in Austin. Marcus and I met 2 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party, and we just clicked immediately in a way that felt natural and easy. He's 31 and works in finance, and he's the most stable, reliable person I've ever been with, which is exactly what I thought I wanted after years of dating guys who were exciting but unreliable. Tyler was my college boyfriend, and we dated for 3 years before we broke up because we were both immature and couldn't handle the pressure of graduation and starting our adult lives. He moved to California for work, and I stayed in Texas, and we lost touch for almost 5 years until he reached out last month, saying he heard about my engagement through mutual friends. At first, the messages were innocent, just congratulating me and asking how I was doing. But gradually they became more personal, and he started talking about how he regretted the way things ended between us. I should have shut it down immediately, but I was curious about his life, and part of me enjoyed the attention from someone who used to know me so well. When Tyler asked if he could come to the engagement party, I told Marcus about it and he wasn't thrilled, but he said he trusted me to handle it appropriately. I thought I could handle it too, and prove to myself that I was completely over Tyler and ready to commit to Marcus for the rest of my life. But when Tyler showed up at the party, looking exactly like he did in college, just older and more successful, I felt this rush of nostalgia that caught me completely off guard. We talked for a few minutes near the bar, and he told me I looked beautiful and that Marcus was lucky to have me, which should have been a normal, polite thing to say, but something about the way he said it made me feel flustered. Later, when I was feeling overwhelmed by all the attention and pressure of the party, I stepped outside to get some air, and Tyler followed me. He said he needed to talk to me privately about something important, and I figured it was just more catching up. But instead, he told me he made a huge mistake letting me go and that he was still in love with me after all these years. I told him it was too late and that I was happy with Marcus and getting married in 6 months, but Tyler said he couldn't let me make the biggest mistake of my life without at least trying to fight for me. He said he knew I still had feelings for him too, and that I was just settling for Marcus because he was safe and stable. That's when he kissed me, and instead of pushing him away immediately like I should have, I found myself responding for what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds. It felt like muscle memory from all those years ago when we were together, and everything was passionate and intense and unpredictable. But then I heard Marcus calling my name from somewhere behind us, and I pushed Tyler away, just as Marcus came around the corner and saw us standing there close together. The look on Marcus's face was pure devastation, and I knew immediately that our relationship might never recover from what he had just witnessed. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus demanded, and I could see his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "How long have you been sneaking around with him behind my back?" "It's not sneaking around," I said, but even as I said it, I knew it sounded weak. "He just got here tonight and we were talking and things got out of hand, but it doesn't mean anything." Marcus pulled out his phone and started scrolling through our text messages, which he must have read earlier when I left my phone on the kitchen counter at home. "These messages go back 3 weeks, Jessica," he said. 3 weeks of you telling him you miss him and asking when you're going to see him again." Seeing Marcus read those messages out loud in front of Tyler made me realize how inappropriate they probably seemed to someone who didn't understand the context. But they were just friendly conversations between two people who used to care about each other, not some elaborate plan to cheat on my fiancé. "You're taking those messages completely out of context," I protested. "Tyler and I were just catching up as friends, and yes, maybe we got a little nostalgic, but that doesn't mean I was planning to cheat on you." "Nostalgic," Tyler said, looking confused. "Jess, what are you talking about? You told me yesterday that you weren't sure if you were making the right choice getting married." I wanted to kill Tyler for bringing that up because it made everything sound so much worse than it actually was. Yes, I had told him I was nervous about getting married, but every bride gets nervous before their wedding, and it doesn't mean they don't want to marry their fiancé. I was just having normal pre-wedding jitters, I explained to Marcus. Every bride questions whether they're making the right choice. It doesn't mean anything serious. But Marcus wasn't buying any of my explanations, and I could see him getting more and more angry as the reality of what I had done started to sink in. He grabbed my wrist again and started pulling me back toward the venue, while Tyler just stood there looking guilty and confused. "We're going back inside, and you're going to explain to everyone why our engagement is over," Marcus said, and his voice was so cold and final that I started to panic. "Marcus, please don't do this in front of everyone," I begged. "This is between us, and we should handle it privately, not turn it into a public spectacle." You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me at our own engagement party, he said, and I could tell there was no talking him out of making a scene. When we got back inside, the party was still going on, but I could tell that some people had noticed we were gone and were starting to whisper among themselves. Marcus walked straight to the microphone that the DJ had been using for announcements, and I realized with horror that he was planning to tell everyone what had happened. "Excuse me, everyone," Marcus said into the microphone, and the room gradually got quiet as people turned to look at him. "I have an announcement to make about Jessica and me." I tried to reach for the microphone, but he held it away from me and kept talking. "The engagement is off," he announced, and I could hear gasps and murmurs throughout the room. "I just caught Jessica kissing her ex-boyfriend in the garden." The silence that followed was absolutely devastating, and I felt like everyone in the room was staring at me, judging me for what I had done. My mum looked like she was about to faint, and Marcus's parents looked mortified that their son was airing our dirty laundry in public like this. "Marcus, stop this right now," I said, trying to reach for the microphone again, but he stepped away from me. "Everyone should know that the person we're celebrating tonight has been lying and cheating and betraying the trust of someone who loves her," he continued, and I could see people starting to gather their things and head for the exit. I finally managed to get close enough to take the microphone away from him, but the damage was already done, and everyone had heard what he said. "He's upset and he's not thinking clearly," I announced to the room. "We had a misunderstanding, but everything is fine." But it was obvious that everything was not fine, and most of the guests were already leaving, because the situation was too uncomfortable and dramatic for a party. My own family members were looking at me with disappointment and shame, and I realized that my reputation was probably ruined forever. Marcus left that night and took all his stuff from my apartment. Both our families stopped talking to me. The wedding got cancelled, and I lost all the deposits. My co-workers heard about what happened and started treating me differently. Even my best friend from college said she needed space to process what I had done. I still think everyone overreacted to one moment of closure. Subscribe if you think getting closure with an ex before marriage is totally normal. Hit like if you've ever been called crazy for just trying to be honest about your feelings. Have you ever been misunderstood when you were just trying to do the right thing? Tell me in the comments.